The stars had witnessed many betrayals across the long centuries of galactic history, but few as cold and calculated as the one carried out on the frozen moon of Vareth 9. Jack Morrison remembered every detail. He remembered the way General Kaler's 4 eyes had refused to meet his when the orders came through. He remembered the crackle of the comm channel going dead. He remembered the sound of dropships lifting off, his dropships, carrying his soldiers, leaving him alone on the surface with nothing but a cracked visor, half a magazine, and the bodies of 6 Confederacy soldiers he had just died to protect. Kaler had called it a tactical reallocation of resources. Jack Morrison had called it something else entirely. That was 7 years ago. The Confederacy of Allied Worlds had moved on. They always did. 17 species strong, stretching across 4 star systems, the Confederacy did not mourn individual losses, especially not human ones. Humans had only joined the alliance 14 years prior, and many senior officers still considered them a provisional species. Useful in limited engagements. Expendable in larger calculations. General Kaler, a Velthari male with 3 decades of campaign experience and a chest full of medals, had filed a simple report: Sergeant Morrison, Jack R. Status: missing, presumed dead. He had not expected the human to file anything in return. They found him 3 years later, not dead, not broken, not begging for rescue. A scout frigate belonging to the independent mining consortium Ironclad Reach picked up an anomalous signal from the Vareth system. When their crew investigated, they found a single human male operating what could only be described as a one-man military installation carved into the glacier. He had armor patched together from salvaged Confederacy drop pods and the chassis of 2 downed Keth raiders. He had weapons, not the standard-issue pulse carbine they'd left him with, but weapons. 3 automated turret systems. A jury-rigged EMP cannon constructed from a dead dropship's engine core. Trip sensors spanning 11 kilometers. And files. Thousands of files. Signal intercepts. Intelligence reports. A complete tactical breakdown of every Keth Raider patrol route through the Vareth corridor, information the Confederacy High Command had been trying to piece together for 6 years. Jack Morrison had been busy. When the Ironclad Reach crew asked how he had survived, he looked at them with dark, calm eyes and said, simply, "I got angry." They brought him in. The Confederacy debriefed him for 2 weeks. Then they offered him his sergeant's rank back, a formal apology delivered by a mid-level bureaucrat, and a transfer posting to a quiet border station. Jack Morrison had laughed for a long time at that. Then he walked out and joined the Ironclad Reach instead. For years later, his name had become something that moved through galactic shipping lanes in whispers. Commander Morrison. Independent contractor. Crisis specialist. The human who the Keth called Vetharak, roughly translated, the one the cold did not kill. He had built something the Confederacy had not anticipated, a network. Human engineers. Velthari defectors. 3 Keth warriors who had switched allegiances after he defeated their commander in single combat and then, inexplicably, offered them tea and a job. Former Confederacy soldiers who had been abandoned in their own ways, on their own frozen moons. He had not built an army out of anger. He had built it out of understanding. The understanding of what it meant to be left behind by people who considered you a resource rather than a person. The moment of reckoning came without fanfare. Confederacy High Command received a priority transmission on a Tuesday, or what passed for a Tuesday in the Galactic Standard Calendar. It originated from coordinates deep inside the Keth Expanse, a region the Confederacy had been unable to penetrate for a decade. The transmission contained a complete map of the Keth command structure, from regional warlords to their Supreme Council. Detailed schematics of 3 Keth weapons platforms the Confederacy hadn't known existed. The locations of 11 Confederacy prisoners of war, alive, being held in facilities the Confederacy had assumed were military installations. And a bill. Itemized. Professionally formatted. payable within 30 standard days. At the bottom, a single line, Commander J. Morrison, Ironclad Reach Operations. General Kaler, who had by then risen to Supreme Fleet Admiral, stared at that transmission for a very long time. His aide, a young Velthari female named Tessara who had grown up hearing stories about humans, finally asked the question everyone in the room was thinking. "Sir," she said carefully, "shall I open a communication channel?" Kaler was quiet for a moment longer. "Yes," he said at last. "And get me a copy of the Human Cultural Briefings." Specifically, he paused, as though the words cost him something, specifically the sections on not insulting someone who has outmaneuvered you. The meeting took place on neutral ground, a station orbiting a brown dwarf that belonged to no government and answered to no flag. Jack Morrison arrived alone. This was not bravado. It was a statement. He had people, good people, but he didn't need them here. He walked through the docking corridor in light tactical gear, no weapons visible, hands loose at his sides, and the Confederacy delegation of 12 watched him come and could not quite explain why the room felt smaller when he entered it. He was not physically imposing by human standards, let alone galactic ones. Medium height. Lean. A scar running from his left temple to his jaw that he'd never had repaired. Eyes the color of deep water, patient and very, very still. Kaler stood across the table. 7 years older. Heavier with rank and consequence. The medals on his chest caught the light. "Morrison," he said. "Admiral." Jack pulled out a chair and sat down, easy as a man at breakfast. "You read my invoice? We have questions about your methods." "I'm sure." Jack folded his hands on the table. "I have some questions too. About Vareth 9. About why 11 of your people have been in Keth detention facilities for 4 years while the Confederacy ran 17 separate, failed intelligence operations in that region." He tilted his head slightly. "I found them in 6 weeks. Silence. "I'm not here for an apology," Jack continued. His voice was conversational. Unhurried. The voice of someone who had spent years alone on a glacier learning that patience was sharper than anger. "Apologies don't feed anyone. I'm here because the Keth are going to make a move on the Vareth corridor in 4 months, and the Confederacy is not prepared for it. I know because I've been watching them prepare it." Tessara, standing behind Kaler, found herself leaning forward almost involuntarily. "And you're offering to help," Kaler said slowly. Not a question. A man reading the shape of something he hadn't expected. "I'm offering to solve it," Jack corrected. "For a price. Partnership terms, not employment. My people operate independently. We don't wear your ranks. We don't follow your chain of command. We share intelligence, coordinate on operations, and you pay us what we invoice without argument." He paused. "And you stop leaving people behind. Any species. Any rank. That's non-negotiable." Kayla looked at him for a long moment. "You came back," the Admiral said quietly. "After everything. You came back and offered to help." Jack Morrison met his eyes, the first time Kaler had looked directly at him since Vareth 9. "I didn't come back for you," Jack said simply. "I came back because there are people out there in trouble and I'm very good at getting them out of it. That's what humans do, Admiral. We don't stop. We don't give up. And we don't leave people behind. A beat. Somebody has to remember that part." The Confederacy signed the partnership agreement 17 days later. The Keth offensive on the Vareth corridor was dismantled before it launched. The 11 prisoners came home. Jack Morrison's invoice was paid on time. General Kaler, for the rest of his distinguished career, kept a single document framed above his desk, not a battle commendation, not a star chart, not a letter from the High Council. It was an itemized bill. 37 line items. Payment received stamp in red. A reminder every morning, of what happened when you left a human being behind and assumed the cold would do the rest. It never did.